Syndicated source material.
Let's continue here. We'll get into part 6, which is Web Spider-Man 102. Now, our heroes find, as chaos and destruction reign across New York City, Morbius, the living vampire, another character that we're bringing into this series. Can you give us an idea who Morbius is?
Much like Malcolm McBride, who became Michael Morbius, a brilliant biochemist who suffered from a debilitating blood disease. He conducted a bunch of experiments trying to cure himself, and in the process, he turned himself into a vampire, having to consume blood in order to survive. He can't go out in the light. He's basically a human equivalent of a vampire. At first, he was your standard villain. I think he made some appearances in old horror comics in the 70s that featured Dracula, and this is also like the first appearances of Blade, and Morbius, I think, popped up in there. But he's primarily a Spider-Man villain. He first appeared in Spider-Man in the 70s. Some people may remember him from the Spider-Man animated series, where they made a Spider-Man series that had to cater to very young children, yet still wanted to include characters like Morbius and the Punisher, so they had to completely dumb them down and castrate everything that was cool about them. Morbius could not ever say the word blood on the show and had to suck plasma through pores in his hands, which made me want to throw shoes at the TV, because I was actually reading these comics where he did suck blood at the time, and I was watching the show like, what the hell is this?
On with part 6 here. Peter nursing his ribs again at the apartment, but he's decided, okay, tape him up again. He's heading back out. Mary Jane, she decides to take care of her problems the only way Mary Jane can, and she goes to the club and starts dancing with other guys. Is this part of it? I remember you mentioned character assassination there, Benjamin. Is this part of it?
I wouldn't call this character assassination. Mary Jane has always been that type of character that when in doubt, she'll just find a party and have a good time. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with that. I think the bigger problem is that this was just a really idiotic conceit to get the action somewhere where Mary Jane already is, so that she can actually have an active role right in the middle of one of these many fight scenes that happen throughout these 14 comics. We find out that this is some celebrity-owned nightclub in Midtown Manhattan. Mary Jane is partying there. Mary Jane's backstory is that she's actually a pretty well-known soap opera actress at this point, so she's a minor celebrity. Everybody's watching her. She's playing it up for the cameras at the club. She's trying to forget that you had like 50,000 arguments with Peter in the past 6 parts of this story. Carnage crashes the party, and that's how we get a lot of these characters all in the same place at the same time for an issue.
Yeah, we get a big fight and a lot of death. They just show up. There's tons of party goers. They start killing everybody. Mary Jane's there. There's a viable threat. If Spider-Man doesn't have a vested interest in trying to stop these guys, now Mary Jane's within earshot of the destruction. She's right there. Now, so the place starts burning down. The Demogoblin starts throwing bombs everywhere. Villains get into a fight. They decide to leave. Our heroes, now accompanied by Morbius, are left to... At first, they're going to go after him, and Spider-Man's like, hey, you guys owe me here. Help me out here. Let's save the rest of these people from this burning building. Let's get them out of here. So all the heroes band together, rescue some people so they don't get killed by this club that is now a shambles. And so we're left with the villains that have decided to leave. This was a big fight. Punch after punch. At the end of this, as our heroes are done rescuing the people, Morbius parts. Spider-Man points his finger at him. He says, I don't like the way you look at me, pretty much. Because there's a hypnotic gaze that Morbius has laid on him in the past. So Morbius gets to step in, and Spider-Man's like, get the hell out of here. I don't like it. And at the end of this video, at the end of this issue, Spider-Man starts to realize that he's teaming with one of his most hated enemies, Venom. So once he comes to that realization, he then says, well, I might as well act like it. At the end of this issue, it's Spider-Man slinging his web up into the sky, And that's where we leave. They're hot on the trail after Carnage. We know that the main goal is Carnage here, because our next issue in Part 7, which is, hold on a second here, 378, Amazing Spider-Man 379. Now, on the front of this cover, there's a new character. We might as well go ahead and talk about him and get him out of the way. In Part 7 of Maximum Carnage, who's our new character here?
Deathlok.
Are you a fan of Deathlok?
I'm aware of him. I'm not a huge Deathlok fan, but he's been around for a good long while. He's a pretty popular character. His stock rose after Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where he played a part in that. Pretty cool character. Cyborg, vigilante type, techno cyborg vigilante type of thing. He's had a couple of solo series, but he tends to be a guest star in a lot of other people's series as well.
Yeah, what I clearly remember from back in the 90s is Deathlok #1 with the foil cover. It was beautiful, and I remember getting that first issue, and I can tell you right now, I can't remember a damn thing that happened in that issue. Okay, Part 7. Our heroes decide to take a little break and come up with a strategy. We've been on the tail, we fight. We come, and then they get away, and then we fight some more, and then they get away. How do we beat these guys? So Cloak, Black Cat, Spider-Man, and Venom all gather in. This is the orphanage that Cletus Kasady grew up in? He did.
At the beginning, on the very first page of this issue.
Okay.
Good.
I was going to say, they gather here to come up with a strategy on how to beat Carnage. They beat the symbiote before with sound, with sonics. For any of you that are familiar with Spider-Man 3, the movie, or I believe this happened in the cartoon, they removed the suit using a large bell. Sonic attacks, I guess you would say. Reed Richards helped out and made a sonic gun at one point, which Spider-Man remembers. So they decide, okay, that's one on the list. The next thing is that the symbiote doesn't like fire. We find out that Human Torch and the Fantastic Four are away from Earth at this point in time, so that we can't get ease of access to the sonic gun. Plus, we can't use the Human Torch for the fire aspect of things. So we're left like, okay, what are we going to do with it? Is there some way we can get fire into this equation? Cloak's like, look, I'll go out, I'll check and see if there's anybody out there that could help us out. The mission is to go to Four Freedoms Plaza, find the sonic gun. That's what our three heroes are going to do. Meanwhile, we still have death and destruction out on the streets. Demogoblin, Shriek, Doppelganger, Arian, and Carnage are out there tearing New York City apart. One person that doesn't like that is Deathlok. Now, Deathlok shows up in this issue, and we get a neat look into how his power set is. He's half cyborg, vigilante type of guy. He decides to do his best against our villains here. Does not work out so well. Even though he gets the upper hand a couple times, he pretty much gets his butt handed to him as they throw him into it's basically a billboard, and he proceeds to get electrocuted. Now, Carrion, like I said, has joined our villains. That's pretty much about it. There's still a little bit more about this whole Demogoblin's plan versus Carnage's chaos. That comes up a little bit in here. But really, it's just the villains have got the upper hand, and they're still dealing death within New York City. And even though Deathlok, who I think must have been a pretty popular character at the time, because I remember specifically going out and getting that #1 issue. So they were probably just like, okay, let's grab him, put him in here. But again, he gets his butt handed to him pretty much. So back to our heroes at the end of this issue. They make their way through Four Freedoms Plaza and finally get to where Reed Richards keeps his sonic gun. Remember, the Fantastic Four are off on a different planet, and the Four Freedoms Plaza is pretty much unmanned other than security. Venom grabs the sonic gun. Now, as it's Spider-Man, Black Cat, and Venom are thinking, okay, what's the next step? Out pops Cloak, teleports into the middle of the room, opens his cloak, and out comes, now this is a Spider-Man cartoon that I remember, Spider-Man and his amazing friend.
Oh, yeah.
Out pops Firestar. Firestar is, she definitely looks a lot different from what I remember. She's obviously been modernized. her costume has been modernized from the 80s. Is Firestar one of those characters that started out in the cartoon first and then made her way?
Yeah, actually, she first appeared in Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and they worked her eventually into as a member of the Avengers, and that's things. Not a huge character in the Marvel universe, but you see her come up from time to time. And it's funny because if they were going, and they're clearly going for an old school versus new school type of thing as far as like characters and methods and ideology and that thing, like they come up with a half-assed excuse as to why the Avengers, the X-Men, and the Fantastic Four are nowhere near New York City when all this is going on to help anybody out. They just hand wave it and say that they're away, they're in another part of the world, they're on another planet, et cetera, and that's why they're not around. They have Firestar, who's an Avenger. If they wanted to throw in an X-Men, they could have thrown Iceman in there and had a little nod to Amazing Friends. I'm surprised they didn't do something like that.
That would have been awesome.
It's disappointing that they introduced Deathlok just to get his ass served in the same issue. He has a pretty good stand for like 2 or 3 pages before Shriek of all people takes him out.
Yeah, oh boy. Yeah, and of course the cliffhanger at the end of this issue, our heroes are standing there. They have the weapons. They've got the sonic gun. Now we've got Firestar, who can deliver the heat and inflame the symbiote. So that's their next step. Our final couple panels are Deathlok laying it strapped up in the cords of this billboard, who looks like he's continually getting electrocuted because it looks like he's starting to catch fire. You're thinking he's dead, but of course, Terminator style, the eye opens up, and that ain't the end of Deathlok. So that's where we leave Part 7 of Maximum Carnage. So far, where we're at, Benjamin, what do you got to say? What do you think so far?
I think that this was a story that got pulled in different directions. The writers and artists had something in mind. They wanted to do something creative and make a point about certain things. Their heart was in the right place. You've got that pulling in that direction. On the other hand, you've got Marvel and whoever was working the marketing department for Marvel and Spider-Man in particular saying, Carnage is really popular. Venom is really popular. A lot of these characters are really popular. Let's put them in a 14-issue maxi series throughout the summer of 1993. Well, does it have to be 14 issues? Yeah, it has to be 14 issues. Let's fill 14 issues of this. That's really a lot of issues to fill for a story like that. This is the argument I can imagine Tom DeFalco probably having with Marvel's marketing department. You have art on one side and commerce on the other. This is what happens when those two get together and can't agree on what this project wants to be. There are some parts that work really well, and there's quite a few parts that I think don't work very well. A lot of the things that we're seeing in this first half of the series, characters being introduced, more characters are coming. This is not the end of that. There are more characters coming. And like I said, the different writers don't seem to have communicated all that much with each other. In some ways, the writers dropped the ball in certain ways. In some ways, the artist did. In some ways, the editor did. DeFalco and Danny Fingeroth, who was editing the Spider-Man comics at this time, their job was to make this cohesive and make this flow. And that's probably the biggest criticism I have on a technical level of this story, is that a lot of times it doesn't flow from one part to the next just because it's completely different creative teams who are probably, it seems pretty clear, are not talking to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Of all the comics out there for Marvel, Spider-Man is definitely one of my favorites. But I can see this as being a series that broke some people. If you're a common collector, and they did this a lot back then, because what would happen is you would pick up Amazing Spider-Man, and to catch the rest of the story, please go pick up Spectacular Spider-Man. They continue to do this for, I think I have some issues upstairs that were in the late 90s, I think, where they still did that. Go pick up this to finish the rest of the story. And that had to have drove some people to say, look, I just want to read a story, and I don't want to have to go and buy 9 different titles to finish your story. Tell your story in one issue. It was the marketing drive behind trying to get people to buy all these separate titles and boost sales for this title and that title. It was pretty innovative, but I appreciated the fact we're talking 14 issues that came out in May, June, July, and August. 4 months. This is a 14-part series that came out in 4 months. This isn't Secret Wars. This isn't Crisis on Infinite Earths, where it was an issue. It was an issue a month. Now, right now, Secret Wars 2015 is 2 issues per month, which is a great pace for me. Plus, it ain't going to break the bank. I can actually be able to afford it the next week. 14 issues in 4 months is just unbelievable to me. And that might have been one of those deals where I was just like, I can't keep up with this. As a kid, there's no way I'm talking my mom or my dad into going in and buying 3 comics a month for me, or 4 comics a month. I was lucky enough to scrounge up money for 1 a month sometimes. That's just the way it was. It wasn't a kid-generated 90s, or maybe a teen-generated 90s. It certainly wasn't. Spider-Man, Marvel Comics was not adult-oriented at the time. This wasn't Vertigo we're talking about. But
at this time, this is the 90s when comics started to skew older, even back into the 80s with a lot of the darker stuff that was going on. They were definitely shooting for an older audience. Whether or not they got that older audience, I can't fully say. I know that they were certainly marketing towards that. The whole crossover thing in Spider-Man actually began with a very good story, one of the best Spider-Man stories ever written, Kraven's Last Hunt, which some people consider to be the greatest Spider-Man story ever written. Incidentally, it was written by J.M. DeMatteis, and it was 6 parts across 3 Spider-Man comics over 2 months. It was still all written by the same writer and the same artist. So while it was 6 parts across 3 different titles across 2 months, it still flowed. It still was cohesive.
You've got your choice. You are as old as you are right now. You get to go back in time to 1993. You've got your choice of which Spider comic you want to write. I'll leave Amazing in there, even though I have a feeling that's going to be the given. But you have your choice of which title you want to write for. You've got Amazing, you've got Web of, you've got Spectacular, and you've got Adjectiveless. All right? There isn't another one in there that I'm missing. That's it, right?
Well, there was Unlimited, but Unlimited didn't last too long. Unlimited was quarterly.
Okay, so we'll throw Unlimited in there. You got those 5. Which one do you want to write for?
I guess it would have to be Amazing, just because that's the one that's been around since the beginning. DeMatteis was writing on Spectacular, but he later became the regular writer on Amazing Spider-Man. He was on Spectacular during my formative Spider-Man fan years, so those 2 books were inseparable. I'd read both at the same time for a couple of years, because they were both really good at the same time.
Okay. Do you have a preferable year that you would have liked to have come in there and started writing? If you could go back to any year in Spider-Man's history, is there one year in particular, or how about one story arc in particular that you would have loved to have tried your hand at?
Probably, since he's one of my favorite Spider-Man artists, sometime in the early 80s when John Romita Jr. was drawing. So I would think, like, which artist would I want to work with? And the 80s were the Roger Stern years. He was the writer along with Romita Jr., and those were the Hobgoblin years, and that was Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut. A lot of the stuff that a lot of people look back fondly on. It was a little bit before my time, but I've gone back since then and read all that stuff, and it's all great. It's all really great stuff. Aside from that, I grew up on the Venom and Carnage years. And the Harry Osborn Green Goblin years, and that's my childhood. That's the stuff that I still have the issues that are completely falling apart because I've read them so much.
That's awesome. All right, well, for Benjamin J. Colon, Jason Teasley, who left us early, who's probably snoozing right now, I'm Jesse Starcher. Thanks again for listening to the source material. I hope you all enjoyed yourselves. Talk to you here next week.
Make sure to check us out tomorrow as Maximum Carnage continues, right here on the Source Material Comics Podcast.